And I say to people, you didn't fail at diets. Diets failed you because they didn't give you the tools you needed to really overcome the problem. And they're focused on food and weight.
Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Tricia Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Tricia Pfeiffer, and I am back this week with another amazing suburban warrior here to share her story with us. And I'm thrilled to have this guest on this episode because we're going to talk about something that we really haven't dove into too much on the podcast. We talk a lot about diet, a lot about nutrition, gut health, what foods are good for us and what foods aren't. But we haven't really dove into sort of the emotional side of eating. And we haven't really talked about, what drives those factors, food addictions, and really how our brain is linked to eating and our diet. And I think that is such an important topic because I think a lot of us just don't even realize that we might be emotional eaters. So my guest today is amazing. Let me introduce to you Tricia Nelson. She lost 50 pounds by identifying and healing the underlying causes of her emotional eating. Tricia is an emotional eating expert and TEDx speaker whose talk has garnered over 2 million views on YouTube. She's the author of the #1 best-selling book, Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. Tricia is the host of the popular podcast, The Heal Your Hunger Show, and has spent over 30 years researching the hidden causes of the addictive personality. Tricia has been featured on NBC, CBS, KTLA, Fox, and Discovery Health, and now she's being featured on the Suburban Warrior podcast.
Yay.
Welcome to the podcast, Tricia.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Chrissy.
Absolutely. Like I said, I am really excited because I think that the emotional side of eating is something that we probably don't discuss enough. There's so much information out there about restrictive diets, what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating, supplements that we should be taking, how we should be losing weight, GLP-1s, like you name it. But we don't really talk much about why we're eating the way that we're eating.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm thrilled to get into this conversation with you. But before we do that, let's hear your story because it sounds like you went through a really real personal journey yourself to really find this path of emotional healing for you.
I totally did. It's my message comes from my mess.
Yeah.
And I was an emotional eater and I didn't know it. When I was in high school, my sister came home from school and she, had read some book or something, and I think it was Janine Roth who kind of came out with the term the first time about emotional eating. I mean, I was in high school in my 80s, so
yeah.
Back then, my sister walks into the house and she's like, "I'm an emotional eater." And I just thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and, and I thought, I just like food. Right. And yet, once you hear something, you can't unhear it. So I started to observe my own relationship with food. And I would go to a Denny's, let's say, with my friends, and they would order a sandwich and it would come with fries. Well, they would, like a normal person, eat the sandwich and pick up their fries. And I would look at them like they were from another planet. And I'd be like, why are you not eating your fries? That's the best part. So I'd eat my fries and pick up my sandwich. And then they'd order like a hot fudge sundae or something. And they would eat a couple bites and then they'd push it away and go, "Oh, I'm full." And I'd
Yeah.
be like, full? What does
Yeah.
full have to do with anything? There's fudge in that glass
Right.
jar, you know?
Totally.
So I just felt like, wow, I am kind of different than my friends. And I was a binger, so I would be very excited about Friday night, whatever TV show is coming on, and I'd have ice cream and, cereal and cookies, whatever. And I would have a beautiful dessert with television, watching TV, but then I'd go back for more and I'd go back for more. And
Yeah.
before you knew it, I was completely stuffed, feeling sick, and then all the like, why did I do that? What was I thinking? So I had all that, guilt and shame that came with my binging. And then by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight, different from my friends, and really unhappy with my weight. So that's when I started really looking for a solution. And I did lots of things. Of course, you do diets. I mean, I started dieting like at age 14, frankly.
Right.
But you do the diet. So let me get control. Let me eat less and exercise more. So you do that. That doesn't work because you can't keep it up. And then it's like, let me try you know, the I'm totally dating myself, but I know I have the right audience here. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
right, the Dexatrim. So I was
Oh,
like buying
yeah.
Dexatrim from the store, and so nothing worked. And then I joined exercise programs and all this. And at some point, then I joined a 12-step program. I even went to an eating disorders therapist. So for a year, I was in eating disorders therapy
Wow.
twice a week. And honestly, Chrissy, nothing really moved the needle. I mean, I could lose weight for a time, but I always put it back on. And
Yeah.
in my TEDx talk, I talk about that. I call it new diet syndrome. Like when you first go on a diet, you're like, "Woo, I'm doing it," and you're all excited, and you have this, this momentum of willpower. Like you can do it because
Yes.
you're excited, but after 2 weeks, you're dragging and you're tired, and you just want your old foods back. And
Yep.
so that's what happened. And I thought, after I had lost about 40 pounds at one point and on this strict diet, weighing and measuring diet, and I lost a ton of weight, and then I started to get depressed is what happened. So I started to have all these feelings, and I didn't know what they were, where they're coming from. I now know they were all the feelings I had stuffed with food because I was an emotional eater, but I didn't know what to do. And that's really when I was like, I have to do something, because I can't do first of all, I can't do the weight loss yo-yoing, because as soon as I lose it, I put it back on, and so I have
Yeah.
like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew where I was going to be on that, roller
Yep.
coaster. And so I just thought, I can't keep doing this. I can't spend the next 80 years of my life going up and down the scale. I knew that was unhealthy. And so that's when I was like, I have to do something. And it was kind of a prayer, honestly. It was kind of a prayer. Like, I can't diet anymore. I cannot do this. And very shortly thereafter, I met somebody who became my mentor. He had been morbidly obese, had lost over 100 pounds spiritually, like just through changes in the way he lived and his kind of rededication to his spirituality. And he started mentoring me and helping me address the underlying causes. So he worked with me, changed everything for me, and then we worked together to help other people. And fast forward 36 years, and
Yeah.
I founded Heal Your Hunger about 8 years ago. I codified everything we used to do with people, and I created a program that was really accessible online through coaching and groups on Zoom and that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
wrote my book and all that. So it's been a beautiful journey, and I've been blessed to help over 1,000 women heal their relationship with food. But it's a pivot from everything we're used to.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And it sounds like obviously this has been like a real lifelong journey for you, because it's something that you, like you said, you recognized in high school, you started dealing with in your early 20s, and here you are all these years later, and it's something that probably you continue obviously now in a different spectrum and helping people, but it has really been a lifelong journey. And, just certain things that you mentioned in your story, talking about sort of like the rituals that we have around food, like, going and Friday night and sitting on the couch and eating dessert and just eating and eating until you don't realize you're so full, you're sick. And I think that there's so many people that are guilty of doing that and making themselves feel that way. And then afterwards you're like, why did I eat that much? Why do I feel so sick? Why didn't I stop after like one serving and not 5? So let's talk a little bit about, I just think overeating is such a thing that we do as a society because it's available to us. We have it. It makes us feel good in the moment and not good after. But I have a feeling that, we know about emotional eating in the sense of, at least, I'm just going to talk about women, but like, from the time that we were young, it was like, oh, I'm about to get my period or I have my period. So, or when we're pregnant, like the excuses about the cravings and why we needed to eat certain foods. So I feel like we have had, that sort of mentality a little bit about emotional eating and why we should eat at certain times of the month or why we would overeat. But I don't think we really truly know about emotional eating. So tell me, really, when you talk about emotional eating, what exactly is that you're talking about? Like, define it a little bit for us.
Sure. I think the simplest definition is eating to feel better.
Okay.
Like we eat because we want to change our mood. And it's not that we're hungry. It's not that we nutritionally are craving something that we need. We don't like how we feel and we use food to change our state, and everybody does it. I think everybody does it.
Yeah.
The problem is some people do it to their peril. It's not a big deal if you do it now and then. Right. I mean, I literally went out to breakfast with my partner this morning and he didn't eat enough for dinner and he was like really hungry. And so he ordered too much and he ate too much. And on our walk home, he's like, I feel like I need to lay down. I'm really, really stuffed.
Yeah, been there.
and so it's like everybody does it. Was his emotional? Probably not. He just should have eaten more for dinner. He just didn't really. He doesn't really track that stuff. I make sure I eat enough for each meal so I don't get too hungry, so I don't overeat. But point is, it's I think we all are hardwired to have an emotional connection with food, and some people though, like me, are more food addicted where once I start I can't stop. And it's not with everything, but it's if I'm eating to feel better, then I'm really in a different headspace and I want the food to do something for me, and then it's like a bottomless pit and I can't stop. So emotional eaters, it is an addiction. Like it can be on the addiction level, which it was for me. And I actually have a quiz on my website where people can determine. We can talk about that, but the quiz will help people know where they are on the spectrum, because I feel like we're all on the spectrum. The spectrum is qualified by two things. One is the level of control one has. Like if you go on a cruise and you prepaid, so you're like, woo, I'm eating, I'm drinking the wine, I'm eating the cheese, and then you come home and you're 5 pounds heavier, you're like, my pants don't fit. Okay, so you jog extra for a couple weeks and you cut out sweets. Boom, your pants feel fine again. That's somebody with a lot of control. And then, so control is one qualification, and the other is consequences. 5 pounds, pants are tight, not a big consequence.
Yeah.
But then there's people on the high end of that spectrum who are not only emotional eaters, but they're really food addicted. And some of the things around addiction, if you look at the clinical term, definition of addiction, you do it in spite of negative consequences, which I did all the time. And I talk to women every day who have a lot of consequences. Like the longer you binge eat, the longer you eat the wrong foods and make unhealthy choices, the more consequences you have. You have gut issues, you have hormone issues, you have, pre-diabetes, diabetes, heart issues, clogged arteries. I mean, it gets serious. Yeah. Not to mention low self-esteem and feeling like you don't want to be seen in public, or you wear black stretchy yoga pants all the time because you can't bear to see your body. So
you don't want to put any jeans on.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So somebody on the high end of the spectrum is someone with very little control. So they come off the cruise, they've gained 5 pounds, but they also kind of opened up Pandora's box, and now they're back to eating desserts, and now they want wine with dinner again. And so before you know it, that 5 pounds turns into 10, turns into 20,
Yeah.
and the consequences, the older you get, the more it hurts, the more, and the harder it is to deal with it. So that's why I
And
say,
the harder it is to lose, right?
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
if somebody takes that quiz on my website, they'll get a personalized score, which will determine where they are on that spectrum. That kind of determines if they're emotional eater, kind of basic, or to the point of being food addicted. And it's important because it's good to know what you're dealing with and to what degree you need to go
Yeah.
to help heal it. But it is a conundrum for people. And the problem is we spend so much of our time approaching it from the wrong way, the wrong direction. We're used to dealing with the symptom of food and weight. And like you said, what's making us do this in the
Right.
first place? And that is what I specialize in, is helping people understand that it isn't just I broke up with my boyfriend, and I'm going to eat ice cream, or these cookies remind me of grandma's cookies. That's what people think of with emotional eating. It's
Right.
way more than that,
Right,
obviously.
right. Because those are things that really food is part of, like, woven into the tapestry of our
Yeah,
lifestyle, right? I mean,
absolutely.
things that remind us of our past or our heritage. You feel good and warm and
Yeah, and
wonderful
there's
eating
nothing
them,
wrong with that.
which is emotional, but that's a wonderful emotion, right?
Yeah.
Or if you do want to treat yourself because you broke up with your boyfriend or something traumatic happened and you want to treat yourself and make yourself feel a little bit warm
It's
and good.
situational.
It's situational, exactly,
Yeah.
which is not the type of emotional eating that we're talking about here.
No, and what's really important for people to start to realize, and the drum that I beat, is that there's a personality profile of people who struggle chronically with food and weight.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think people who struggle chronically with food and weight are typically emotional eaters, if not food
Yes.
addicted. And what I mean by this is that, we're always like, give me the diet. Like, what should I eat? Should I do keto? Should I do
Yeah.
vegan? Should I, be doing intermittent fasting? Like, we're always trying to find the right formula for food and weight. But what nobody's talking about is, how we get into this situation in the first place. And really, how we get into this situation is that we are living in a way that's causing us to need more food or think we need more food. So I call this the anatomy of the emotional eater, which is a play on words, but anatomy meaning it's a personality profile. Okay, so
Yeah.
these are personality traits that make up the anatomy of the emotional eater. There's 24 traits that I've identified, and these traits have nothing to do with food. Okay, but they have everything to do with why we eat. And the
Okay.
top trait, we're not going to go through all 24 here,
Yeah.
obviously, but the top trait is people pleasing.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, like I
Okay.
really never met an emotional leader who wasn't a people pleaser to some degree, and I was a terrible offender of this. But the point is, as emotional eaters, we typically are looking for validation from outside of ourselves. I mean, women do it in general.
Yeah.
It's a liability, I think, of our culture as a
Right.
woman in our culture. But it's like on steroids for emotional eaters, where
Okay.
we typically didn't get a strong foundation, growing up. Not always, but it wasn't always grand in our childhoods. And so we are looking outside of ourselves for that validation. So we become, as overeaters, we become overdoers, and we are always running around like on overdrive, doing, packing our schedule, busy. The project needs to be done, I'll do it. Somebody needs to drive the kids, I'll do it. Somebody needs to make the brownies for the soccer team, I'll stay up till 11 doing that. It's like we are always raising our hand, doing these extra things, and taking care of other people's stuff that they should be doing for themselves. We're also really good caretakers.
Right.
This is another trait. But the problem with people pleasing, Chrissy, is that nobody's ever as pleased as we plan on them being. So not only are we totally stressed out from overdoing, but we're also pissed off.
Yeah. Right. Because you're
Because
not
we're
getting the
like,
response that you want.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's like that being pissed off and exhausted is like the perfect storm for going home and being like, I screw them. They're not going to recognize me. I'm going to recognize myself. I'm going to have the I deserve it binge.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's an example of how it's more of a living problem than an eating problem.
Yeah.
We're always
Right.
looking for solving the eating problem. That's like the caboose on the train. We got to look at the cars that come before the caboose, and it's how we're living. It's the choices that we're making. It's being on overdrive all the time. It's being too busy. It's never being able to say no to anybody or put boundaries in our time. It's never having self-care in our life. Like these are all symptoms of being an emotional eater because we're always seeking the validation from productivity, from accolades, from more degrees.
Yeah.
And that's to me where we need to start putting our attention because the way we're living is creating the stress that's driving stress eating.
Yeah.
Now, when you're so busy, also, you don't have time to deal with your emotions. So back to the emotional eating, topic, there are three things that really drive that compulsion to eat, and there's people listening who are going to know what I'm talking about when I say compulsion. It's like this monster inside. Like if you've been dieting for a couple weeks, then you start to get this, like for a while, again, new diet syndrome, you're having a good time, like you're feeling great, going to gym, whatever. But then it starts becoming a slog, and you start to get this tightness in your tummy, and it's like this spring that's turning and turning and turning, and then you're like, Katie, bar the door. Like, I can't take this anymore. I have to have whatever I need. And so it's a compulsion to eat. It's like you can't stop yourself. And my experience is that comes from stress. We just talked about stress. Also, buried emotions. Like, we're not paying attention to how we feel about things. There's things happening every single day that we have feelings about. But because we're so busy, we're not taking the time to address, how did I feel when I got that letter, that rejection letter in the mail? Or how did I feel when they gave the project to someone else thinking they were more capable than me when I've been busting my ass for years? It's like there's feelings we have around everything that we totally disregard. But those feelings, the emotions pile up and they create this need for food. And the other thing is habit. Like it's purely a habit, to be going to the refrigerator looking for something to give us that little pick me up. So these are some of the things we need to address as well. The emotions, the stress, and we need new habits. Like we need new habits for feeling comforted. We need new habits for getting the sense of connection that it's not food we're hungry for.
Right.
It is not food we're hungry for. And people are taking medication, which is, working for some people it doesn't work for. But the fact is, what we're really hungry for is still not being addressed.
Right. Yeah. The root cause. I mean, it goes back to our entire medical system. Really, I mean, you name it, whatever symptom it is that we're dealing with. Many, many times the root cause of the problem is not being addressed. We're, receiving medications, we're getting things, procedures, you name it, to just sort of band-aid the issue. But the actual root cause of why we're experiencing it is not being addressed. And yes, it might be a short-term fix, but if you look years down the line, it is something that is always going to be cropping up, and you're going to be dealing with your health, and it may crop up as another disease or something else. So I agree that I think that root causes really have to be addressed. And in this instance, it's really about why are we eating? And to your point about habits, I think that is huge. I think a lot of people with their diets and what they eat, it's revolved around habit, and they think that they can't change it because it's what they've been doing. So I mean, I'm a great example of that, just in the sense that, when I decided in my 40s to start trying intermittent fasting because I wanted to see if it would work for me, I was like, I don't know how I could not have breakfast. I mean, breakfast is my favorite meal, and I need creamer in my coffee and all of these things. They were just the stories I was telling myself.
Yep.
And once you start to change your habits and try to slowly take these steps to modify what it is that you do, it is amazing what you can accomplish. And you realize that, again, those habits were just formed because of an old story, and now you can change your story, and then you can change it again. Because, I mean, I'm intermittent fasted probably for like 10 years, and now I don't really do it because I have found a different way that makes my body feel good. So I think, again, it's something that we have to constantly evaluate and look at ourselves and figure out what is the best way for us. Okay, so I'm curious, so we talked about a lot of things that can cause the emotional healing. What about, I know you talk about some steps, some simple steps that we can take to help end emotional eating. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I will say skipping meals it's a pitfall for emotional eaters. So a lot of times people do intermittent fasting because they feel so out of. I'm not saying this is your situation, but you brought IF up, and emotional eaters use it because they feel so out of control with food. It just keeps them out of the kitchen longer.
Right.
Which is
I totally get that. Right.
It's not a solution.
Yeah, for me, I did it because of perimenopause, and I was trying to figure out a way to lose some of that belly fat.
Yeah.
And I think that it was part of it. Like, I think it might have helped. And to be honest with you, it did help me just feel better. But I was also going through a gut health journey, and I figured out a lot of other things. So again, now that I've healed my gut, I don't really need to intermittent fast, and I have other ways. So for me, it was like part of a journey, a health journey.
Totally.
But I could 100% see that if you have an emotion, it keeps you out of the kitchen. And
yes, and that
makes so much sense.
And if you I don't know if you've watched Cynthia Thurlow's. She's a friend of mine, and she has this TEDx talk on intermittent fasting. That's like 15 million views or something. But she says, like, the one caveat is if you have disordered eating, this is not for you. And the reason is because fasting. So as emotional eaters, when food saved us when we were children, and we had very few resources to deal with the pain we were in, and a lot of emotional eaters have stuff from their childhood, sexual abuse, neglect, whatever. When you don't have too many resources as a kid to deal with what's going on in your house, food is there for you. Food is there for you. And it was my comfort. I mean, popcorn in General Hospital, like every single day.
I mean, that sounds pretty fun.
So, again, the right audience for that.
Yes, exactly.
Out here.
Oh, yeah.
So food works. And there's something that gets built into our psyche is that food saved our lives. In that moment of time as kids, when it's all we had, maybe a few of the things, but there's sort of a sense that food is like inherently a lifesaver. So when you get too hungry, and you do the intermittent fasting, 16 hours windows, whatever, when you do that, there's a part of you, that little girl that was saved by food, that feels like she's going to die if she doesn't eat.
Yeah.
It's very subconscious.
Yeah.
But my point is, it can really be a trap for people when they do open up their window of eating, and then they go overboard, or they just can't quite figure out calorie-wise because they're off, their schedule's off. And so that's why I say to people, the most loving thing you can do is start eating what I call 3-meal magic. And I call it that because it's really basic, and I don't tell people what to eat. I mean, I am a sugar addict, so sugar is a setup for me. Sugar and processed carbs.
So is that something that you eliminate from your diet now because of that?
I do. And I have workaround. I love stevia. I carry a bottle of stevia with me wherever I go. It's not a big deal, but it creates a panic in people if you talk about not eating sugar. It will panic them, which just proves the point that we are very emotionally connected with our food,
Right. Absolutely.
But the thing is, 3 meals a day with nothing in between, and you can even do 12 hours between dinner and breakfast just to get the beginning benefits of intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
But when we feed ourselves on a regular basis and we don't have a huge fasting spread, it starts to calm us down, and it's a way of sort of loving ourselves back to health, because we've been on so many erratic rides with food and diet and different plans and that kind of thing, that to make sure, and emotional eaters are great at skipping meals or forgetting to eat, but we always pay for it later, with nighttime eating, nighttime binges, so just kind of trying to come back to a calm way of eating, like 3 meals a day, put 4 or 5 hours between each meal. Again, do 12 hours between dinner and breakfast, but feed yourself. Like, we don't know how to feed ourselves.
Yeah.
We're so erratic.
Totally agree with that. And I think that, there is so much research out there on intermittent fasting and who it works for and who it doesn't. To your point, maybe if you are an emotional eater, it's not right for you. And I think there's also a lot of research out there that shows, again, I'm just speaking for women because that's the audience I know, but like women who are still cycling, it's really not ideal for them because, your body's nutritional needs are different during each part of your cycle, the luteal, follicular, like all these different phases. You need to eat and you need to nourish your body with certain foods. And it's ironic because I have 3 daughters who are obviously, not in perimenopause. They're young. And they naturally sort of intermittent fast because they sleep late. I mean, when they're not in school or working, but they're sleeping late, they skip breakfast, this or that. And I'm like nuts about it for the opposite reason. Like, no, you need to eat healthy fats. You need to have, all these things that are going to nourish your body and help you to feel better and healthier during that phase of your life. So I do think that it's very specific to every individual, just like really everything is. We're all bio-individual. We have to figure out what works best for us. But I think that warning about intermittent fasting or just skipping meals in general, if you are an emotional eater, is really important to know, because in the end you really do pay for it because you just overeat. And listen, I don't think I'm an emotional eater, but I will say when I skip meals, I am so hungry and usually end up overeating at the next meal.
Yeah, it's so easy to do.
It's natural. It's really natural because you're starving. So then you're picking maybe while you're preparing, and then you eat what you prepared. Then you want a little something sweeter for dessert. And the next thing you know, you're so full and you don't feel like doing whatever it is you're supposed to be doing next because you're overstuffed.
It's really just, we've been on a ride. If we have struggled chronically with food and weight, we've been on a 30, 40, 50-year ride.
Which, by the way, I even if you are not an emotional eater or food addict, I can't imagine almost every woman out there that's listening to this can't agree with what you just said. That at some point in our lives, it has been an emotional ride with diets. I mean, I grew up when I was younger. My mom and my older sister, she was 6 years old. I mean, like I remember they were like doing the grapefruit diet where they ate nothing but grapefruit for like a week. Yeah, I mean, there was the soup diets, like everything. And then I started in that same thing. It was just like Slim Fast is going to make me thinner. We have, because we've been marketed to, we've been told, every day we still are. I mean, my entire Instagram feed is about what I should eat, what I shouldn't eat, what diet I should be doing. To the point, I block it out now because I know better. But for a long time, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, well, it's abusive. Like, we've been abused by adult
diet
I
love
culture.
That.
And we need to detox from it. Like, we need to heal. And I do this exercise with people, this healing exercise to heal the shame and the pain of doing things and spending so much money on things that didn't even get us anywhere, except feeling abused, and making us feel like it was our fault, and I say to people, you didn't fail at diets failed you.
Yes.
Because they didn't give you the tools you needed to really overcome the problem. And they're focused on food and weight. And if you just take away all your favorite foods, those are your coping tools.
Right.
Like, that's what you use to cope. If you take that away, what have you got to cope?
Yeah.
I mean, again, you can last for a couple weeks, but you don't have anything to cope, and you're going to be quickly looking for the thing you know works.
Yeah. So how do we detox from diet culture?
Well, I think it's really important that we, like, first of all, recognize that it was a 30, 40, 50-year journey of, failed things, but things that failed us, not we aren't the failure.
Yeah.
So we have
Yeah.
to like have compassion for ourselves. And what I do with people is I help them see that even though we spend a shit ton of money,
Yeah.
and try lots of things and feel like a failure, it got us to where we are now. And
Yeah.
so that's the silver lining is it wasn't a waste if it helped us know what doesn't work,
Right.
right?
Yes.
It wasn't a waste if it helped us. See, I had to try all the physical things and then I had to try all the psychological things before I realized I need to go to the emotional and spiritual,
Yeah.
And so when
Yeah.
I went there, then things started to turn around for me. But if I hadn't done the other things, I wouldn't have gotten to that point. So there's always a silver lining, and it wasn't us who failed. We just cycled through, and obviously we're marketed to and we bought the dream, like
Yes.
there's a quick
Yes.
fix. There's a
Yeah.
quick fix out there. But it got us to here to today. We're wiser and where we're also, I find the women that I serve who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s who also sometimes they say to me, Tricia, I'm not really focused on the weight. I just want to feel sane around food. I
Yeah.
just want to have a healthy relationship with food and with my body. And there's some wisdom in that too. Like, let's stop trying to make it work and force our bodies to be what we think they should be. Let me find peace. And that's what I say to people. I say, we're really going for peace here.
Yeah.
Like, let's find a place of peace, definitely with food and with our bodies and with ourselves, because it is being driven from the inside feeling of inadequacy, or loneliness or shame, and all those things can be healed. So, I mean, I teach people a lot about self-care, starting their morning with a self-care routine like meditation, prayer, Bible reading, whatever brings you, walk in the woods,
Yeah.
breathing exercises, stretching, like create a ritual in the morning that's healing. Like we have
Right.
to, I call it putting money in your spiritual bank account. Like you have to put deposits in first thing so you can have something to draw on later when the stress of the day piles up. I mean, 75% of emotional eaters do most of their overeating from 4 o'clock on because
Yeah.
the stress throughout the day is piled up, and then we're like, and we all have a slump in the afternoon. It's like then we're looking for coffee and chocolate. But if we have put money in our spiritual bank account, then we can be pulling from those deposits, from the resources later in the day when we're out of juice, and
Yeah.
so that's really, I couldn't do it without that. Like, really important to have that ritual. And we basically have to nourish our souls. Like, we have to
Yeah.
be intentional about nourishing ourselves in the way that we're really craving nourishment.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I think I couldn't agree with you more about the morning routine. That is something that I have had as part of my own life probably for over 20 years, and I have been talking to clients about it forever. I think establishing that morning routine to sort of set your day off in the right way is everything. It's huge. I mean, how you start your day is how you live your day. And even if, you can only take 10 minutes in the morning to, focus, like you said, maybe write in a journal, listen to a meditation, whatever it may be, because that is really it is amazing mentally and emotionally how when you set yourself up from that day. I mean, I think it's important too because it's chemical. It's how our bodies work. It's setting up our body to be in parasympathetic versus fight or flight. Throughout our day. And, so even at a cellular level, when people are like, well, does it really work? Does it matter if I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes in the morning? It does. It does, because it's your cells responding to what you're doing. And, so I love that. It really sets you up for your day, because to your point, I do think midday is difficult for a lot of people. Women get tired. We have that afternoon slump. You're looking for something as a quick fix. And most of the time it's something in your refrigerator or a cup of coffee or something like that. So, really focusing on what can I do first thing in the morning and how is it going to set me up for the rest of the day is hugely important for that morning routine. Yeah. Okay. So if someone who's listening right now is thinking like, yes, this is me, I've been doing this my whole life, what is the first step they should be taking to, again, address the root cause?
Yeah, I would say definitely slowing, like looking at your schedule. Like, what are you doing that somebody else could do?
I like that.
Yeah, like what are you doing? Like focus on what you do best. Delegate out because you're doing too much. You're inevitably doing too much. What are you doing that somebody could be doing for themselves? Okay, way too much taking on other people's responsibilities. Stay in your own hula hoop. Even as a mom, right? Like you can let your kids take on more responsibility.
Totally.
And the other thing is, what can I do in a morning routine? Like what is my morning routine? What I also would suggest, I do recommend my book because I talk about those 24 personality traits of the anatomy of the emotional eater. I lay those out, and emotional eaters will be like, check, 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 because it brings your awareness to what you're doing and how you could be living differently, but how so many of your responses come from that place of being an emotional eater and having that personality profile. That's really important. Yeah, and then getting community, getting connection with other emotional eaters. We tend to think we're the only ones who have done the things we've done, and that's why I do my programs in groups, because it's so good to come out of the closet and be like, oh yeah, I binged like that. Oh yeah, I did that crazy thing trying to hide what I ate, we have a lot of secrets. Lot of secrets. And so getting in community, people always think that, because they're ashamed of their habits, they keep them secret. And then they also think they should overcome the problem on their own. And I say hardly, and good luck with that, because the thing is, this is the hardest of all addictive habits. This is the hardest.
It's so readily available, right?
Yeah, and everybody's doing it. Everybody's pushing it, and so people think, oh, I should be able to. And it's only a cookie. Like we're just talking about cookies here. It's not like drugs,
Right.
The thing is, drugs and alcohol. With alcohol, you put the plug in the jug. Like it's black and white. Like you don't do it. That's it. Case closed. But not with food. You have to take the tiger out of the cage 3 times a day. Pet the nice little kitty, and then that has its teeth gnashing, gnarling, and then put it back in the cage without getting your ass torn off.
Yeah.
That is much harder, and we've been doing this addictive habit much longer than anybody who has a drug or alcohol problem typically. I mean, I started when I was like 5, being obsessed with food. So all the more reason why we need coaching. All the more reason why there's no shame in getting help. We don't mind hiring a trainer at the gym. We know we're going to do more reps if we have a trainer staring at us and yelling at us, right?
Yeah.
But we don't want to get coached because this is food. No.
Yes.
You need the accountability. And you need support.
Yeah.
So
and I think that is so important to recognize, because it's through community, it's through connection that we really are it's how we heal in so many ways, including this one. So Tricia, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really loved hearing your story. I appreciate and thank you for being so vulnerable and opening up to us about your lifelong eating habits and issues and where that stemmed from, because I think so many people will be able to resonate with that story. So thank you for opening up and for sharing your expertise. So you talked a little bit about the quiz. We're going to put the link to the quiz in the show notes. As well, we'll put the link to your book and your podcast and all the other resources, how people can find you on all your socials and on your website. So thank you so much for offering all that to us.
You bet. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. We would love to know what you think of this episode. So please go into Apple Podcasts and drop us a review or leave us a comment on Spotify, because when you do that, it really helps us to be able to reach more women so they can hear this amazing episode and the podcast. And we're just out here wanting to help more and more women each and every week. So thank you for being here. We'll be back next week with another amazing Suburban Warrior. See you next week, guys.